Nintendo is getting out of control. They put one of their biggest announcements of the year for one of their biggest projects ever out in possibly the weirdest way imaginable. They have hinted at ingenious new hardware that may also be the worst thing we've ever seen. And with these rumors of new hardware running rampant, the company president suggested in an interview that they might be hinging their entire future on the account system that no one ever thinks about. But for every weird thing that's been happening, Nintendo made what is likely their worst decision of the year. On October 24th, 2023, Nintendo sent the Super Smash Bros. Community into a frenzy when they changed their community tournament guidelines on a whim. Now, Nintendo's been at war with the competitive scene of this game for some time now, and they've shut down massive tournaments, tried to charge organizers over $50,000 to hold a single event, and even sent individual tournament organizers cease and desist letters. Now, it would be one thing to refuse to acknowledge the esports scene that this game has fostered, but as they have done many times before, Nintendo is actively trying to snuff them out. While their previous attempts have riled up players and grabbed plenty of negative press, their most recent guideline update may actually achieve what they've dreamt of, unlike past decisions ever have. This list of rules is supposed to govern how players can compete in all of their multiplayer games like Splatoon, Mario Kart, and most importantly, Smash. The platform fighter's massive community holds tournaments all of the time, scaling from a handful of players on a college campus to thousands of avid competitors in sold-out convention centers for hundreds of thousands of viewers across the world to tune into. A typical large to mid-sized tournament will often have sponsors to help pay for putting it all together, as well as cash prize incentives to increase competition and stakes, and like any other sporting event or live entertainment, organizers can charge for admission and sometimes sell concessions as they see fit without any input or oversight from Nintendo. Now, most tournaments struggle to cover venue fees as is, and people simply hold these events out of a passion for the game. But the ability to be able to recoup at least some of the operating costs is certainly better than not doing so. But with these new guidelines, Nintendo is trying to ensure that it's much more difficult to do even that. These new rules include prohibiting organizers from turning a profit, limiting the amount of competitors allowed into events, capping the entry and admission fees as well as prize pools, banning sponsorships outright as well as the sale of food, drinks, and even merch, plus so many other frustrating little intricacies that make no sense. But at the same time, they're not allowed to put the company's name anywhere near their event. Now, these rules suggest that Nintendo has finally decided that people can really only play the game the way that Nintendo sees fit. And it seems as though they're actively trying to stop competitive play, and needless to say, the communities are pissed. And as you could probably guess, Nintendo is facing heavy backlash as a result. So while fans can hope that these rules will go unenforced or the decisions can be overturned, nobody's holding their breath that Nintendo's going to be taking them back anytime soon. But as this company seemingly always does after kicking players in between the legs, they've given us a cookie to make it all better with some of the biggest news we've gotten in months. In a tweet posted on Nintendo 7th, Shigeru Miyamoto made the massive announcement that production was underway for a live-action film adaptation of The Legend of Zelda. Based on how much cash Nintendo brought in with their most recent soiree onto the big screen, one could only expect that they'd want to run it back. But they also announced that they're going to be doing things completely differently than they did with the Mario movie. They're abandoning the style used in their most recent film, switching distributors, and working with an all-new crew, and they handpicked some of the most divisive Hollywood names that they could. At the time of writing this, all we know is that production has been ongoing for some time now, and the film is going to be made by Sony Pictures with financial backing from Nintendo themselves. On the creative side, it's going to be produced by Avi Arad alongside Miyamoto himself, written by Derek Connolly, and directed by Wes Ball. If you're not familiar with any of them, that's okay, neither was I. Ball has directed the Maze Runner trilogy, which I enjoyed but received quite a bit of mixed reception, as well as the upcoming Planet of the Apes film, so now that's something to watch for. Connolly has an extensive background in visual effects, but most recently he has written all of the Jurassic World movies, as well as Detective Pikachu. While I thought the latter wasn't too bad, the former was generally considered less than stellar. And lastly on the project, we have Avi Arad. He is responsible for producing a ton of superhero movies, including Iron Man and basically every Spider-Man this century, as well as another video game adaptation in Uncharted, and oh god, he did Morbius? So looking at that back catalog, let's just go ahead and face it. I mean, Tom Holland's gonna be Link. Let's just accept that. I mean, they did Chris Pratt as Mario. What's gonna keep them from doing this? Anyways, the real curveball in this announcement, however, is the decision to opt for live action instead of animation. This is especially surprising given the resounding success of the Super Mario Bros. Movie earlier this year that was, of course, animated by Illumination. Plus, Zelda's bright and colorful world seemed destined for an animated film. And while it's understandable and frankly expected that they'd want to cash in on their recent successes with more films, abandoning the style that netted them so much incredible success in the first place certainly is. And all we can do now is hope that it comes out at least okay. Let's be real, it's probably just gonna be mediocre and we'll all forget it exists in 10 years. But this random announcement is nowhere near as unexpected as Nintendo's newest hardware idea. Recently, a new patent application was uncovered for a device that may be one of the worst things Nintendo has ever done. The Nintendo Switch era is soon to be coming to its end, and while the console has sold over 132 million units and seems poised to surpass even the PlayStation 2 to become the highest-selling video game console ever, there's no arguing that it's desperately due for a successor, and it looks like it might be just around the corner. According to reports from Nintendo-affiliated developers, dev kits have arrived, and members of the press who were at Gamescom in Germany over the summer reportedly got their hands on the console behind closed doors. With this new hardware possibly on store shelves as soon as next year and limited public available information, GameRant has reported on a patent application that Nintendo filed in late 2022 for this device that may just be the next-gen console. These images show a dual-screen device that can be folded and separated into two separate pieces, each with the screen of their own, mimicking the layout of the Switch. Purely based on history, particularly that of the Wii U, this device screams, "I won't sell well because I'm pretty confusing, but I guess I'm also cool. I swear, buy me." Whether or not this is actually the next generation console is of course still up in the air, but speculation on the patent has centered around this device being able to play local multiplayer with two players each having their own part of the console, as well as simple compatibility with the libraries of the Wii U, DS, and 3DS, plus an option for single screen play replicating the current generation hardware. But this patent seems to have one massive flaw that absolutely can't go unmentioned. While the whole selling point of the Switch is that it can be taken with you wherever you go, then brought home and docked to play on a TV, the device shown in this patent doesn't show any means of docking the console, leading many to believe that it's likely handheld only, making it even more confusing. With that said though, it is important to remember that this is just a patent and Nintendo files a ton of these every year. It could have just been a cool idea somebody at the company had, so they locked it down, but with new hardware on the horizon, anything is on the table, and it looks like Nintendo is already worrying about what's coming next. In a recent interview with Inverse, Nintendo of America president Doug Bowser was asked how the company plans on transitioning the Switch's massive install base to their next generation hardware. Nintendo has certainly struggled with this in the past, dating back to when parents were buying kids NESs when the SNES was right there. But most recently, this was evident when they released one of the most disappointing machines of all time. The Wii was a smash hit and caught the eye of great aunts everywhere, so the decision to make a console that they claimed was for more hardcore gamers, include a tombstone with it, and label it as a sequel, yeah, the Wii U was dead on arrival. And with reports that the next console is just a high-powered Switch and some egregious patents floating around like we just saw, everyone is anxiously awaiting to see what's coming next. Unfortunately, back to the interview, Doug Bowser declined to comment on a new console's existence, likely because he couldn't, but he suggested that they have previously failed to make a smooth transition between hardware generations. Gee, you don't say. He went on to elaborate that they plan to prevent future failures by leveraging the Nintendo account system that's already being used on the Switch to also work with any future devices, as it already does with mobile phones and of course the hybrid console itself. From a typical player's perspective, this seems so minuscule, as the account system right now doesn't do much of anything. It serves as a means of accessing NSO, buying games, and redeeming stupid little avatar things. But being able to carry over anything from this console to the next one would be a godsend. While Bowser went on to entirely neglect the next part of the interview's question about players bringing their content and investments in the Switch into the next generations, his words implied that the linked account system could suggest that the new console may be backwards compatible. Oh, thank God I'll still be able to play Shaq Fu. And while all eyes have already shifted to what's to come from Nintendo, the biggest news this past month may have been based on what already happened. The quarterly report for the summer months was finally released and revealed that Pikmin 4 has become the best-selling Pikmin game of all time after selling just over 2.5 million units. This game finally bucked the trend of perpetual failure by fixing the series' biggest flaws in the most subtly impressive ways possible. And to find out how they finally fixed the cursed franchise, you'll want to click the video on screen now to learn how Pikmin finally broke its never-ending losing streak.